is going pretty slow to get people who are struggling to get Python in, still not feeling like they're too behind, and because we were going over the fundamentals, and the fundamentals are so important. So the next part we're going to go over, which is files, I'm going to go a little bit faster because we should have a fundamental idea of how Python works, about the indentation, and of course the hardest thing about Python, which is the string handling. So are you ready to start recording, Sam? Oh, you're muted, Sam.
It's going. Yeah.
Oh, it's going. Okay, perfect. All right, so let's continue on to file handling. What have I done? I have too many tabs. My tabs are too big. All right, let's see here if I can find my way around. Okay, so we should have finished up strings. Did we finish? Yes, we did. So we went over the Unicode, how Unicode works. And now we're going to go over basic file handling, bytes and files. Let's see. That's the wrong page. There we go. Okay, so we already went over integers a little bit before, where we have a number and we can do mathematics on that number. So once again, if we go into Python 3, we have an integer, let's say a equals 10. We can do multiplication, we can do division, we can do any sort of mathematical operation we want to do on numbers. And the nice thing about Python integers is they can basically be of any size. And so Python's used a lot in mathematical computations, because you can have a number here like a equals some huge number, and we can print a, and it's still that same huge number that we can do computations on. And if you've ever used C or C++ or a lower level language, you'll know that you have to worry about, oh, do I have enough bytes to store this data? In Python, it handles all that background stuff for you. So we're going to get into bytes. So a byte, though, is always going to be 8 bits. So you can have a number between 0 and 255. And that's one of the big differences between a byte and an integer in Python. And so to define bytes in Python, I think we've gone over this a little bit before. You just add a b before the string. So we'll call this z to be a little less confusing. You put a b before a string, and that means that string is going to be a series of bytes. Or another way to think of it as a standard ASCII string. So A, and we can print z, and we have 3 A's. We can also do print out the first character, which is 65. Ooh, so that's a byte of value 65. Nice. But what if we add 20 to it? Oh, so we can add things to the byte. So if we have a single byte, we can add values to it. But what if we add 250 to this byte? We get a number back. So it automatically converts it back into an integer. So if you have a byte in Python and you add a number to it, it'll convert it automatically into an integer. Now you can't convert 315 back into a single byte. You'd have to convert that back into 2 bytes. Let's see. Let's do this right here. I'm going to copy this, and we're going to throw it into a file. Buffer, yes. Nanobytes example.py. Paste this in. So we start off here with our variable a being a byte of value 1. And we're going to print what a is and what type of variable it is. So in Python, let's say we want to figure out what something is. So we could do the type function and z, and we'll see that it's a byte array, or byte of this. So it's a class bytes. So we're going to print out what A is, which is going to be 1, and that it's a series of bytes. And then B is going to be the first byte, and we're going to figure out what that is. So let's run A equals B, print A type A. So we see that A has a value of 1, and it's a class of bytes. If we set B to the first value, the first, if you are familiar with lists or arrays, you'll know exactly what's going on. I'm taking the first number in the byte list, setting it to B, and we're going to print B and figure out what type of variable it is. We see that it's an int. So we converted a byte, which is usually between 0 and 255, into a number that can be any value. That's nice. So we could set, so let's run the full program here. Let's exit. Python 3 by, okay, I didn't save it. Sometimes helps if you're going to run something to save it first. Python 3. Bytes example.py. So we have, so B is 1 and it's an int. 2, so then we have C, which is equal to 2, and that's also an int. And then when we convert it, we convert it back into a bunch of bytes, which is what's going on here. So just keep in mind that bytes, you don't necessarily do math specifically on them. What you use bytes for in Python is just as a go-between for ASCII or old protocols. So let's do some stuff with files. We're going to create a file in a text editor called hello. We can do that very simply by going back to our command line here. We're going to go to nano. We're going to call this file infile. I'm going to put hello in this file. I'm going to save it. So now we have a file in here called infile. And infile contains the message hello. Well, that's nice. That's friendly. So what we're going to do is we're going to open infile. We're going to read all the bytes, and we're going to print each byte 1 by 1. And let's see what happens. So let's nano file1.py. Put this in. We're going to save. And now we're going to run it. So Python 3 file1.py. So what happened? We opened up the infile.rb, infile as read bytes as f. We're reading 1 byte at a time. And while we don't run out of bytes to read, we print out the byte. And what we get is HELLO and a new line character. That's what that \n means. It's an escape character meaning new line. If we cat infile again, you'll see that's the same data that we had in our infile. In our text editor, let's make this program. So we'll call this files2. So let's exit out of here. We're going to make a new one called file called file2. Paste in from Sam's website. In file, read as bytes as f. Open up the out file. So we're going to be writing. So we're going to be writing as bytes. We're going to read in from the in file and then write every byte to the out file. So we're going to read in and then read out. I'm going to save. Run it, Python 3. file2.py. We read it in, and now we should have an out file. Yep, there it is. So if we read out file, we should have the same thing as we saw as the original infile. There we go. So infile and out file are now the same. So now we know, now we have some examples of how to read from and write to files. And we have some flags here. So we're going to download a file. If you are on Linux, and you want to know how to download a file off a website. The easiest way to do that is through the wget command, which stands for webget. And you just run wget and the URL. And now you have the file on your desktop. If for whatever reason you're on a system that does not have wget, you almost certainly have curl, which is another utility in Linux for downloading programs. The only difference is that in curl, you actually have to specify the output file. So curl-o, meaning output, outfile.txt, and then just the website that you're downloading from. So there's two ways. I would recommend wget because it's a little simpler. You just wget and the URL. So you get that file, and you are going to count the number of 0.8 bytes in that file. So you're going to read in the bytes, have a counter. If the byte has a value of 8 hexadecimal, increase the counter. We're going to add files. We're going to add bytes and 2 files together to construct the flag. So if it's basically, we're sort of weaving 2 files together. So we're going to read a file, read another file, read a byte from one, read a byte from the other, and then write those 2 bytes into the output. W command not found. Yeah, apt install wget. We'll install wget. Like I said, some systems don't have wget, so curl is a good alternative. Or if you can, just install it, apt install wget. And then we're going to add bytes and 2 files together to construct a new file. Open that file in an image viewer to get the flag. So we're going to have some ASCII art, I assume. And we have some references down here, how to convert between bytes and ints in Python 2.7 and 3.x. All right, and I will take a little break to see if there are any questions. Otherwise, I think we're done with the introduction to Python. Like I said, if you have any questions about how to read or write from files, these examples are pretty much all you need. Here we have simply reading, and here we have reading and writing.